Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Kiddushin daf Pei Beis, which is the last daf in Masechtas Kiddushin. We are going to begin on Pei Aleph Amud Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom by the two dots. Dilu, if already your children are older and you're in the same bed, Zeh Yashin B'Ksusa B'Chulu, you should be wearing clothing. B'Kama, exactly what age? So Omrav Ad Barav Aza. For a girl who's 9, Tinik ben Shtei Mesri Shanam Yomechad, boys 12. Ikidarmi, some say Tinikas bas Shtei Mesri Shanam Yomechad, a girl who's 12. Tinik ben Shol Shesri Shanam Yomechad, 13. The time of Barn Bat Mitzvah. V'zeh Kadeshu Shadayim Nechaynu Usareach Simeach, which is passing Yecheskel, also in the Haggadah. Literally, the breasts are formed, the hair is flourishing, which means that they're showing signs of maturity. They're going through puberty. So at that point, they should be wearing clothing. The only time we say this din is Ella she'enu busha lamed l'fan of arum. If they're not embarrassed to stand in front of you naked, of a boy lamed l'fan of arum, aser. Once they are embarrassed to stand in front of you clothed, and Rashi says, it must be that they understand that there's an element of what a man is and what a woman is, and therefore, because of that, it's also my time of Yetzer Albisha. They already have an element of this Yetzer Hara, of the understanding of having tashmish. Rav Acha bar Abba ikal be Rav Chista chaste. So Rav Acha bar Abba went to the house of Rav Chista, who was his son-in-law. Shakli labas barte, he took his granddaughter, Osvuha bekanfe, on his shoulders. Armalei lo sevel amar dimikadsha. Don't you hold this whole din that you shouldn't be doing this? As Rashi, Eina daini odeya. Don't you, my master, know shehi mikudeshes? She is a married woman. You should distance yourself from a married woman. Armalei avartlach adarav. Diyam Rabbi Huda Marabi item Rabbi Lezer asal adam shikadishes bito kashikatana. She's a kid. Why would you have her get married as a katana? By the time I plan any rights, you're supposed to wait. So Mar Nami overlay the Shmuel. The Yamar Shmuel ain mishtamshin beisha. You're not supposed to again be mishtamish with a woman. Armalei ana ki idach the Shmuel severely. I hold like the other Shmuel. The Yamar Shmuel, as we see on Pei Beis Amud Aleph, beautiful 3 words. Hakol Hashem Shemayim. Bear that in mind. Hakol Hashem Shemayim. Says Rashi, the ain daiti achareha lachibas ishus. I'm not thinking about her in a sexual way. El chibas kurba. She's my relative. She's someone that I have a connection to because she's my relative. V'lasas kars ruach le'ima kashani mechabeb esbita. So when I'm nice to her, it shows I create strong, positive family relations. So it's an important thing that what you do, as long as it's l'shem shemayim. Says Taisus, Yalzu anu saimchen hashneshanu mishtamshin b'noshim. There's a reason why, if a woman's married, but again, if it's a way that's done l'shem shemayim, then it's not considered to be an issue. Question 6. It's an interesting question. L'mai hilchasa amr b'gemar hakol l'shem shemayim. So he says like this. It's not chibas ishus, so it's not a problem. Okay. Says the Mishnah. Says Masnisen. Lo yilamid adam ravak seifrim, v'lo salamid isha seifrim. So says Rashi, a ravak is a panuya b'loy isha. This is a single guy who is not married. He should not be seifrim. Malamdi tinaikas. Koloimer lo yargul ravak atzmul yosmin a seifrim. Someone who is not married, maybe nowadays we could even translate someone who's not in any type of a relationship whatsoever. Obviously, you're supposed to be married. But this guy, if he's single, it's not right. There's something going on here. And you want him to be hanging out with kids, you have to be a little bit cautious of that. So it's the same thing when it comes to a woman who's not married. Should be the same, also same thing. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, someone doesn't have a wife, or doesn't have doesn't say, look how that's what it means, right? Lo Yalamed Seifrim. Again, he shouldn't be a teacher. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo Yira Ravik Behema, he shouldn't be a shepherd. Lo Yishnu Shnei Ravakim Betalasachas, two single men should not be in the same bed. And Rashi says, and I won't translate this Rashi, Shel Yavalidei Mishkav Zachar. The Chachamim say, come on, we're not going to be chayshid that two guys who are just good friends, that they're going to be chayshid in Mishkav Zachar or in being with a behema. That's not something that a person would do. Says the Gemara, my timer. So what's the reason that we should have these different restrictions on someone who's a bachelor? Is because of the kids that he's around. Mosanya. Amru lo Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Yehuda, well, naturally Israel mishkav zachar v'al behema. What's the problem of a single, a bachelor teacher? Is it because you're afraid that he's going to, and he's teaching boys in a boys' school? So we're not chayshid mishkav zachar. El Ravik, the reason why we don't want this guy, misham imhata dinuki, because the women are bringing their kids to school, and because he is having this connection, this emotion, this relationship with the kids, with his students' mothers, we're concerned about what may end up happening. Ishmisham avata dinuki, same thing. If fathers are bringing their kids to school and they have this teacher, maybe men will gravitate toward her. Someone who doesn't have a wife at all, maybe he's married, but she lives in Los Angeles and I live in Chicago, but I'm married. So Tashma, it's not just that this person is married, but he has to actually be living with his wife in order for it to be okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yirachu. Tanya Omer Rabbi Yehuda lo Nashnu Yisrael Mishkav Zachar v'al behema. Okay, which is again what Rashi quoted and the Gemara just quoted as well. All right, weiter. Let's see this lengthy last Mishnah. This Masechta says Masnisin. Kol sha'asokavim hanoshim. Anyone who is involved, his job is with women. Says Rashi, Shemalechas nasoi nasas l'nashim v'nashim srichasloi. He does some type of business with women, and women need him. So you can understand the problems. Lo yisachidim hanoshim. He has to be careful not to be yisyachid with women, and it doesn't just mean regular din. But Rashi says, Afil im harbi nashim, lefi shalibu gaspahu, that because he has this close relationship, he has this connection to these women, so even if there's many women he shouldn't be with. Says Rashi, though, v'ilu nash ish acharina ben shtei nashim tanan avol im shalosh or arba shapradami. When it comes to just a regular guy who doesn't have such connections to women, so then we're not as strict, because he doesn't really have a connection or relationship with them. You should not teach your children a craft, which again is something which is more of a woman's craft, or a job in which you're going to be primarily around a lot of women. You should teach your child, the Gemara is going to explain what this is, a job which is clean and simple. You should pray to Hashem. We know there's no job that's perfect. There are good jobs and bad jobs. There are jobs that you can make a lot of money on, and sometimes you can not be so successful. Shalanias min umnois, Shalashiris min umnois. It's not the job necessarily which is going to cause you to become wealthy. It's based on your own schus. So a person could have a particular job. You can have a resume, you can have everything you need, and you can have a job. That doesn't mean you're going to be successful in that job. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be a lucrative position. So you have to be mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you'll be matzliach in the job that you have. Have you seen in your days animals don't have jobs, which is not necessarily so true by all animals, but we typically see that animals can live just out in the jungle. They hunt for an animal and they eat it and that's it. Or they're herbivores, they can just eat some berries, they can eat some grass, and that's it. The cows can just simply eat. These cows, they're to serve me. Right? I'm allowed to eat a nice steak. My purpose is to serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So shouldn't it make more sense? Why is it so difficult for me to make a living when a cow can survive without much difficulty? Ella shahirati masai v'kifachti es parnosasi. Because we don't do the right thing, and because of that, our parnosa is hurt. Now, I like to translate that as making good life choices. Also, it's possible, maybe homiletically, if you decide to drop out of high school, have a child out of wedlock, and you don't have a strong job, then you're going to have a lot of troubles. If you make bad choices, sharasi masai, that my actions are bad, so then you're not going to have a good parnasa. So the way that you could be successful is by making good choices. But the poshup shan is that if I do averus, so Hashem's not going to make it easy for me to have a parnasa. Much like by Adam, kartz v'dardar tatzmiach loch. It's going to be a challenge for you to be able to have a parnasa. Abba Gurion ish Sadyon Oimer. So this person, he said the following. Oimer, he said Mishum Abba Guria Loylamed Adam es Benai Chamar Gamal. Kador, Sapan, Roya, Vachenvani, Shum Nasan, Umnois Listim. You shouldn't teach or have your child do any of these different types of jobs, which are a Chamar, Gamal, Safan, Kador, versus or Bali Karanais. They are like Uber drivers, taxi drivers, right? Kol il umnos listiais. They're like thieves. It says Rashi, Kisha, Lonim Bedrachim. When you're sleeping, they take wood from the vineyards, uperois and fruits. The oid sheniskarim adam mavirin al tanom. They end up again not going against what the stipulations were, etc. So all these different jobs, including a chenveni, a storekeeper, their umanois is umnos listim. Doesn't mean that necessarily, but you have to find yourself in a position where the job that you have is a job where it's going to be less likely for you to become corrupt or to be deceitful. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Mishmai, a chamarin, when it comes to people who are donkey drivers, Ruban Rishayim. The majority of those dudes are Rishayim because they're thieves. On the other hand, Vahagamolin, camel riders, Ruben Ksherim. And the reason why is because since they're out in the desert, Rashi says, so V'Yureim Lanavsham U'Mishabrim Libum Mamokoim. Because they put themselves in a more precarious situation, this is something in which, again, the din is they're more likely to be kosher. And for that matter, Hasaponin, Reuben Chasidin. When it comes to sailors, which is mamish asakana, they're constantly in very dangerous situations, even more than camel riders. So most of them are actually Hasidim, maybe like we see in the story of Yonah. Toiv shibarofoyim legehenim. The best of doctors are going to go to Gehenim. And Rashi says, Enu yare min hachoyli, umachalo meichel bariyim, ve'enu mishaber libel amakoyim. They have a God complex. They don't think about what they're doing. Sometimes they even kill people. So, of course, there's certain doctors that do that, Bisman Hazeh, which is unbelievable. But even if, again, obviously they don't necessarily intend to want to hurt someone, but they're not necessarily giving the best advice for a person to be physically healed. Instead of telling someone, why don't you eat well, work on your diet, exercise, instead they'll give you medicines in which this way you'll have to keep coming back and back, etc. So not necessarily addressing the root of the issue could be something in which is not sincere. V'kosher batabachim, the best of the butchers, shutafoi shel molek. They're like partners of a molek. Again, why would you gravitate toward a job that you're constantly involved in killing things? Okay, it's a good thing because we need to eat meat, but why do you have to be the one that does it? So you're shutav of a molek. You're connected to death and blood. Rabbi Again, it doesn't mean that it's an avera, it's a mitzvah to do shchita and stuff like that. But why is this your entire profession that you decide to be a butcher? Okay, it may, on some level, show a little bit of the characteristic of the type of person you are. Doesn't mean necessarily you're an evil person, even though it says you're shutav of a molek. It means that you're someone that's more connected to blood than other people. The profession, if you can be zaycha, to be able to learn Torah, and to somehow make it into a parnasa that you can survive doing, learning Torah, teaching Torah, promoting Torah, that's the greatest thing you could possibly do. You get its reward in this world, but the principle remains. Other jobs not. When you become sick or old, at a certain point, okay, there's age requirements in the United States, but there's also possibilities. Well, they may not be able to. You can't prove it, but they don't want you anymore because you're too old. And before Social Security, what would a person do if they stopped working? They wouldn't survive. It protects you from all bad. When you're young. And it gives you purpose and hope in your older age. Which is an amazing idea. Is that if a person works his whole life, he works 40 hours a week, and he's on a train 2 hours each day, so it's 50 hours a week. Can't wait till the day he retires. The day he retires, he has nothing to do. There's nothing to live for, nothing to wake up for, nothing to motivate him. Unless you had a game plan of this is what I want to do, this is how I want to spend my retirement, it's a fool's finish line. And because of that, a person unfortunately deteriorates rapidly upon retirement. But a person has Torah, someone who values constantly learning and growing, that's something which you could do even when you're retired. You could continue to learn Torah, and therefore that could be a major staple, a major part of your day. And that will give you fulfillment, that will give you hope, that will give you a goal to be able to continue to grow, even at an older age. And Pumfakert, if you're able to, let's say, find yourself in a base medrash, you can now help younger kids because your knowledge of Torah is greater than them. You could be part of a base medrash program, a kol program. You could do things to learn Torah and to help other people, which will give you chizuk, because you realize that even though I'm not working, but I can still teach Torah. I can still make a positive contribution in this world, and that is something which is very important to give that element of self-fulfillment to an individual. But Naruso Mahuaymer, when you're young, what does it say? V'kavi Hashem Yachalifu Kayach. Those who have hope in Hashem, they'll be given strength. V'zikunaisa Mahuaymer, Odim V'maseva. Even when you're old, V'chenu Aymer B'Avraham Avinu, V'Avraham Zakin, V'Hashem Berach Hazav V'Kol. Hashem blessed him with everything when he was old. Masinu Shasa Avraham Avinu as Kol Tarakula, Ad Shlo Nitna. Avraham did all the Torah. Shnemer Ekev Asher Shema Avraham B'Koili, V'Yishmar Mishmarti, Mitzvoisai V'Chukoisai V'Sarasai. He did all the mitzvos. Okay, before we get to the end of this Masechta, let's look at question 7. Eza Malachis Asurais. What jobs are usher for a ravak, for someone who is a bachelor? So one is being a teacher, and in addition to that, the Gemara also says, the Mishnah says, lo yira ravik behema v'lo yishnu shnei ravakim. Okay, so basically he shouldn't be a shepherd or a teacher. Let's see what he says here. Melamdi dardiki roya behema. So those are things that a person should not do. Let's look at question TA 19. Kol she'oskav im hanashim. Anyone who's involved with women, lo yisyached im hanashim. So my kamashmon, hakol adam asal yisyached. There's still an isser of yichud in general. This was the Rashi that we saw. This is TA 19. That normally a man can be with two men. A man can be with 3 women, let's say, but not if we're dealing with a situation where that man is involved and has a relationship with women. Then we're even more strict. Question TB 20. Madua Ruban Shel Hatzafanim Chasidim. Why are the majority of sailors, why do we say that they are Chasidim? This is TB 20. And Umadua Toiva Shabatabachayim Shutva Shel Molek. Why do we say that the butchers are considered to be a partner with a Molek? So we already saw this in Rashi. Rashi said that when we're dealing with people who are constantly going into the waters, which is the Makam Sakana, so because of that, they're going to naturally be more connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of the Nisim and the fact that they've been saved. So what I wrote. Hasafanim Tamid B'mayim Charifim, like choppy water. Vehem b'makam sakana tamid. Vehem srichim lispalil Hashem she'Hashem matzah lo'isam. Hashem should save them. Aval hatabachim hem tamid oiskim b'malacha shel ritzicha hariga shel behemos, murder and killing animals. V'zeh hateva shel amalek shehem ohavim laharoig es adam. Just like Amalek loves to kill people, same thing over here. If you look in Rashi, Toiv Shabbat Abachayim, it's a different answer, I guess. It's not wrong what I wrote, but it says Sveki Trefois Bois Liadai. These types of people, sometimes there's a suffix Trefa. V'chas al mamaynu machilon. And they're not very particular when it comes to a suffix trefa, because they don't want to lose money. What does that have to do with being a shutter shel malik? It's something to think about. It's interesting, different shot than the push-up shot of how I wrote the answer. I'm not sure if what I wrote was wrong per se, but it certainly is not what Rashi says here. Okay. Let's see this last piece of Gemara and we'll finish this Masechta. Says the Gemara, Tanubanu, Kol she'asakavim hanashim, and who was involved with working with women continuously, Suru Ra. Says Rashi, that's min hagoy ra. It's a bad thing to be accustomed to do. Kigoyin, for example, people who are hatsorfin. Says Rashi, sorfe zahav, people who are involved in processing gold. Vahasirikim, Rashi says, is sarek begadim unashim. If you comb women's garments, vanikurais, Rashi says, is menakri richayim. You're involved in millstones. Women go there to grind up their food constantly, so women are there. So you'll see them. You're going to interact with them a lot. Varoichlin, someone says, Rashi, moichlin keshuti b'samim anashim. You're like an Avon lady. You knock on their doors. You sell spices to women, perfumes. Vahagardim, which are like weavers. Vahasiparim, which are a barber. What's the problem being a barber for men? Women will bring their children to you to cut their hair. V'ha'koivsin, and the launderers. V'ha'gara. Says Rashi, Uman hamakiz dam al shem she migareya sadam. So you're someone that is a bloodletter. V'ha'balon. V'ha'borsiki. So if you're in these professions of, let's say, your tanners, Rashi has it actually in different order. Halavlon is like a person who's machamim merchatzois. You are a bathroom attendant, bathhouse attendant. So again, you could be involved with women, and obviously women may not be clothed there. Okay. Ein mamidin mehen lo melech lo kohen gadol. These people cannot be ever a king or a kohen gadol. My time lo mishum depsile mishum dezil umnosayu, which is interesting. We know that Haman, as the Gemara Megillah says, that he was a barber. So it's like, so he was a barber. So we see over here, that's considered, at least then, zil umnosayu. That was like a lower level of a job. Nothing wrong with having a job. It's good to have a job, better than being unemployed. But it's considered to be not the most admirable professions. Tanrabanan. Asar devar nemer begara. There's 10 things that are said about people who are bloodletters. Mahalach al sidai. They go on their side, and there's a whole gears over here. What exactly that means? But it represents some element of. It's right. It says on the side over here, Hoyach bekumas akufa. Your head is up high. You're bal gaiva, baruch gasa. You're of a very arrogant spirit. Venitla, v'yoshev. You're like hanging and sitting. V'eno tsara. You're stingy. V'eno roi, a bad eye. Oichel harmi. You're a big eater. Moitzikima. Little comes out of your body. V'chashid al arayas. We suspect you on having a riot with people, on stealing and on murder. Why? So Rashi says, Arias, since you're constantly involved with women. Why Gezel? So once you have this close relationship with these women, so these women are going to start stealing from their husbands or giving you their money. And sometimes it says that you may kill people, right? Maybe you're drawing too much blood and you don't know what you're doing, or that person, you shouldn't have let blood from that person on that particular day. So these are all different things that are very dangerous. Darish bar kapar oyel milamad adamis benoy nois nikiya b'kala. So what is this profession that is a good, clean, nice profession? As we continue to the very last amud of this Masechta Pei Beis Amud Beis, Machata detal miyusa. So Rashi says a machat, a person who's a sewer. So if you're involved in a very simple profession, you sew clothing. It's a good job. Tanya Rabbi Omer, there's no job that does not pass from the world. Ashimi Sharoyas Hoyrov Bu'umnois Ma'ula. It's fortunate, says Rashi, Shabbatel min oilam ben shehi nakiya ben shehi mu'usa yish but sarich. Every job is needed, but praiseworthy as hoyrav Yoldav as Yoldam Unois Nikia, that when you have your children working a good job, Boom Nois Paguma, right? Let me read that again. Rabbi Yomi Enocha Umnois Shavesman Oil Mashami Sharoyas Harab Umnos Maula. Good is it if you can see that they're doing a good job. Oil Misharoyas Hoira Boom Nois Paguma. Not a bad job. Yesh Oil Buloy Basam Vula Borsiki. We need both jobs. We need someone who's a tanner and also someone who is engaged in perfume. One has a lovely smell, one has a disgusting smell. Ashrei mishum nasa basam, v'oili mishum nasa borsiki. So you gravitated toward one job or the other. So you're fortunate if you're able to be in a good job. And you should thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ashrei, you should be praising Hashem and thanking Hashem. Thank goodness I'm in a good job. Yeshua oil blo zacharim v'lo nekevus. The world has to have men and women. Ashrei mi shabanav zacharim v'oiloi mi shabanav nekevus. So praiseworthy if you have boys, you don't have girls. That's one shot. And I once heard Rabbi Winselberg once said, and this is obviously not Pasha B'Shah, but it's so Nugea 2023, that you can have a boy, but Ashrei, if your banav, your son, your children, your boys, or mamish zacharim, or boys, the oil of mishabanim nekevis. Woe if you have a biological boy that Nebuch views themselves as a nekeva. So again, the terrible tragedy of having a child who has gender dysphoria perhaps is alluded in this Gemara. But again, it's certainly not Pashib Shot. Teach them a good job. And you should be Mismal Hashem. So Hashem, that's in charge of your wealth. So again, you have a lot of success. You also have to realize that there is a Kadosh Baruch Hu that gave you that success. Shimon Elazar Omer Imr Isa Miyamecha Tanya Shimon Elazar Omer Miyama or Isa Tzvi Kayetz. I never saw a deer Kayetz as Rashi Miyavish Katsios Pasada. There's drying up like foods in a field. The Ari Sabol. I never saw a lion carrying burdens. V'shu'ol chenveni. I never saw a fox as a storekeeper. V'heim misparnasim shaloi b'tsar. That these animals can survive without much difficulty. V'heim lo nivro el l'sham sheni. They're only here to serve me. V'ani nivreis l'sham ishes kaini. I'm here to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ma ilu shal nivru el l'sham sheni misparnasim shaloi b'tsar. These animals can survive without much difficulty. V'ani, however, in myself, Shnev Reisi L'Shamish is Kaini. I'm here to serve Hashem. Edu Din should be Kavachaimer. She is Parne Shul B'Tzar without difficulty. Ella Shaha Reisi es Masai V'Kipachti es Parnasasi. Shnemar Avoinoi Seichem Hitu. So this is again according to Avonos, the sins, which again maybe could also mean poor decision making, which includes of course sins or terrible decisions. I only teach my children Torah. This is going to be the last question over here. Question 8. Why is Torah considered to be the best profession? Why is this considered to be the best profession to learn Torah? Question 8. So let's see how the Gemara concludes. It says, first of all, Shekol Elotaira. Shekol Umnai Shib Oilam Edo Medislo Elobimiz Yeludusai. A regular job, as long as you're strong, you can work that job. Avobimezik Nusa Haru Mutal Barav. Nebuch, when you're older, you're going to be starving. Avotaira Enukain. Now when it comes to Torah. It gives you hope when you're young as well as when you're older. So let's see what he answers over here. So that's one answer. Certainly, He says also, which is on the previous Amud, Sha'adam oichel mischar b'olam hazav akern kayam b'olam haba. So the other answer, as we saw actually in the Mishnah, that when it comes to a person who is learning Torah, so both answers are really found in the Mishnah, but this is quoted again. Sha'adam oichel mischar b'olam hazav akern kayam b'olam haba. So that's another answer, which again is the same thing as the Mishnah continues, and this is basically how it ends here as well. And he says as follows: when you're young, and therefore we see from here that Torah is the greatest thing that you could possibly teach your children, that this is their umnais, this should be your profession. Again, obviously it doesn't just mean this is your profession, but it's something which should be your life's work. And therefore by doing this, you're going to have a successful life, not only when you're younger, but also when you're older, as I explained before. Hanulach asar yochsin uslikol mesechtes kedushin. Hanulach asar yochsin uslikol mesechtes kedushin. Hanulach asar yochsin uslikol mesechtes kedushin. Obviously, Adkan.